Oh, what the hell, dude? Their stream died. What the hell, dude? Their stream died. What the hell, dude? Oh, no. We're not doing this. Alright, hold on. I gotta find safe music. Oh, fuck, it's today? It is today. It is today. Monka. Oh, we're back. We're back. We are back. Okay. Oh, listen to that music, dude. Sound is so scuffed. Alright. You guys think the Reddit is, got anything good on it? Wait, we have the technology. Yeah, we'll do something. We'll do something. This is fine. I don't care about seeing Twitch chat. Fuck Fairgraves. Grinding your gains. Wait, wait, what? No, dude, I put buff summon Reaper in my fucking stream title. Buff that shit, it's dog shit. Hold on, wait. True. People in this stead trying to... People actually defending that shit? Dude, Summon Reaper is dog shit. It is so just fucked. It is so fucked. If they gave it a damage multiplier and never nerf second wind. No, I don't think so. I think it would still be dog shit, actually. It needs more than that. It needs help. Summon Reaper needs help. What's up, Nile? How are you? That's so fucked, dude. I don't I have buff Summon Reaper in my stream title? Time for a quarterly Chris propaganda update. Melee League incoming. I bet my left nut. Buff Summon Reaper, please. Yeah. It's in my stream title. Why is this on the front page of Reddit? A small reminder, Reaper has less HP than one zombie. Yeah. Dude, I played Summon Reaper for like at least 80 hours. At least 80. Because I played it on a Guardian and for BPL. I played it on a Necro twice, and I played it on an Occultist. I played that skill a shit ton. I tried everything to make that skill good, and it's just not. It's fucking dog shit. I even, in HCSSF, got Astronaut's. I was one of like 5 people on the ladder, the whole league, that had Astronaut's Gentle Touch. And it still felt dog shit with those, and it would still die in red maps post buff.
Great pleasure.
Oh, thanks for Prime 2.
Easy.
packing for move next week. Oh shit, dude. When are you moving? This sounds like terrible timing. Bro, you're literally moving on the league launch? That's so fucked. No. This guy's wrong. This guy's wrong and he should feel bad. I read the first sentence. Pretty good for bossing thanks to the special attack bleed, but it's not even good at bossing. Because it does less damage than every other minion type. And you need to use a bow. 90% of the time, you have to use your main ability. You have to use its command attack, like its dash. Because it does the most damage. But it's only got like a 50-something, 60% chance to bleed. Unless you have a bunch of awakened gems and alternate quality gems. And they're all fully qualityed. So, you use your main attack and it may not even proc the bleed. So you're doing half damage. You have to use a bow for ensnaring arrow. Ensnaring arrow is just a huge fucking issue in and of itself. They need to change ensnaring arrow to be like ensnaring bola or something, and you throw a pair of bolas that like slow them and make them take more bleed damage. Or just delete that shit from the game and make bleed deal double its current DPS baseline. Something. Because on every build that doesn't go Crimson Dance, having to use a bow or having to have a bow on weapon swap to actually deal single target DPS is mega scuffed. That joke does not work in English. You're correct. I was confused. This is also not mentioning that like Reaper insta dies to a bunch of boss mechanic. That shit just like... Oh, really? Mac in English means poopy, so it is kind of close. It's not entirely trash. This is Previ. This is the guy who made the first bleed build. Yo, dude, someone said it. Skelly Mages, which are basically totems. This is the first time I've ever seen anybody have the same opinion as me. Literally totems. Not minions, totems. Writing guides as aids. It seriously sucks. It's super stressful. At least, I don't know. But when I do it, it's super stressful because I have to think about every possible thing someone might ask, and I try to cover it all. And obviously that's impossible to do. But just attempting makes it fucking hard. I feel like a lot of people would agree with Skelly. Skelly's being totems. Yeah, true. It's just, I think a lot of people don't make that connection by themselves, you know? I feel like when I say that on stream, a lot of people go, yeah, I see it. But I feel like a lot of people are playing Skelly Mages and they're like, wow, this minion build sure is cool. I feel like it's one of those things you have to like take the pill and then you can't go back. You know what I mean? Once you start seeing Skelly Mages as totems, you can't really think of it. It's just like they're totems that scale off of minion damage instead. You know what I mean? You can't think of it as like a minion build anymore. It's not very minion-y. It's not fun. Because I love minion builds, but I've never played Skelly Mages very long. And I mean, like, when I say very long, I mean, I've never played it to maps. I almost did this league, but then private league happened, so I dropped it at like level 60. Like, it was literally an Act 9 or Act 10. He's about Endgame. %40 of the live stream is dedicated to the Endgame. Yeah. Uber Elder flip recipe, and also please let me fucking Horizon Orb Conqueror maps and Elder maps. I fucking hate that you can conquer, or you can Horizon Orb Shaper maps into each other, into other Shaper Guardians, but you can't do it for Elders or Conquerors. Please let me do that, dude, please. We're 20 minutes out, boys. By the way, people on Twitch frogs, drops are enabled. So as long as you have your like PoE account linked to your path or Twitch account, you get dank MTX. No need to relink anything. You just got to make sure they're you just got to make sure it's linked. It's like watching 30 minutes or something. Oh, speaking of, you can go to Path of Exile's main website and check your connections so you can see if you have it enabled. pathofexile.com, my account /connections. If Twitch shows up on this page, you've got it enabled. You can get drops. Wait, the website's down? Oh, well, you can check it on Twitch too. Oh, that gif is so good. Honestly, it's way better without leaks. Like, it sucks leading up to it, but the reveals are so hype without leaks. Dude, it is actually insane to me that they're revealing all of these new uniques. Now, the thing here is that Darky, even if melee doesn't get buffed at all, Darky has a unique helmet that is going to giga buff slams, Seismic Cry namely, which is going to be a huge band-aid. Even if they don't give any attention to slams whatsoever, Darky, one of Darky's uniques, will basically buff the shit out of Seismic Slam again. Now, we just have to prage. In terms of like League starting a slam or something, you better pray that it drops off Eater or Exarch or Shaper or Cirrus. Realistically, any of those. I mean, I can, me comfortably, I can farm any of those a few days after League launch. Now, if it drops off Uber Elder, then we're very sad. Then we're very, very sad because I can't, like, Uber Elder is a lot harder to do. Like on a League start scenario too. Just getting to Uber Elder takes way longer than the others. You know? And then we go hard card trade. I mean, if it drops off Uber Elder, it just won't be my League starter, right? I'll just League start something. I could even go like just generic like DD Ignite, Boss Rush, farm up all the new uniques. This is super exciting. This is so big for like people like me. Just anyone in general who plays, not even like HCSSF, though it's the biggest impact on HCSSF because these are new boss uniques, meaning they're going to be farmable, they're going to be target farmable, and they're made by HCSSF racers, which means they're going to be hardcore viable. So this is huge. Very, very easy to target farm. You'll always get it from the same place, and it's all of these are basically guaranteed to be very good, or at least viable in hardcore, which is Something you can't say for a lot of unique items in PoE, obviously. "15 minutes out, boys." Well, that's the thing. Drop rates don't matter much for most of these, right? Black Star and Hunger, easy to farm. Eater and Exarch, super easy to farm. Shaper, easy as fuck to farm. Cirrus, easy as fuck to farm. The only annoying things on this list to actually get to is Uber Elder and Maven. In terms of like farming them for a boss drop, Maven is just annoying as fuck, and Uber Elder is just time consuming. And I think Uber Elder is the most dangerous boss on this list by far. But the thing with Maven is like her Atlas passives are like super underwhelming. And the one that speeds up witnessing is basically suicide. So like what I found doing the Fismus League was I was just like spamming witness invites. Like I was just spamming formed and hidden, or formed and twisted, because that was like 3 to 4 Maven fragments per. So I kill all the guardians once, Maven witness, do it, get 3 to 4, do it again, 3 to 4, do it again, get a little bit more than what I need for the boss fight. That's the easiest way to farm Maven. Obviously though, you can't do that until you're like well into like Endgame, because you need to be farming, like you need to be dropping guardian maps like out the ass, right? Because that's 12 guardian witnesses minimum to get it. And you also need to be pathed all the way to the Maven side of the tree, because if you don't path all the way up there and you do it, you're probably going to get 3 per witness, which puts you at 9. So you would need an extra set of guardian maps, or to do 110 way from Maven. But yeah, they need to make getting to Maven less of a pain in the ass. Or like if they're gonna make it as long as it is, they need to make getting to Maven a lot more rewarding, because Maven influence right now is not influence, it's like pay to lose on your map device. You have to invest way more to get less, to actually like detriment yourself. It's crazy. I've just been casually playing a bunch of D2 SSF off stream, because I was streaming it and like, dude, my streams were like so fucking dead. I was like, okay, it's just PoE waiting room, whatever. I've just been playing this shit off stream. I get it. Ugh. Ten minutes out, boys. Are you busy with starting work? You get a new job? That's right. Wait, are you moving because of work too, Nile? Yeah, I saw Pox playing this. This game actually looks kind of cool. That's not like a cross-state move for you though, is it? Dude, I totally forgot. I forgot about this part, and I was just reading this part, and I was like, God damn. He's 50 hours into PoE, and he's about to finish the story. I totally, like, disregarded the first sentence. Oh, yeah. I get that. When moving, it's so much easier to just get rid of all your shit. Just give it away to anybody. No, fuck manifestos. A lot of people are taking no manifesto to mean like not a lot of changes, and I don't think that's right at all. I think we're just not getting a manifesto because every time they release a manifesto, they shoot themselves in the foot and they get really memed on. Especially with the most recent format that manifestos take, which is, hey, we've identified this problem. We're outlining it right here. This is literally the problem under the problem spoiler section. And then this is our solution directly under the problem we just addressed. And in our solution, we don't address the problem directly above it, like whatsoever. Like every time in the past few manifestos. So I think they just decided to move away from that format. Because people always mauled over the manifestos. Whether it's just them being like poorly written up or having contradicting info in it. People really only care about the patch notes because like the manifesto in a lot of ways is just a teaser for patch notes. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot of info. So 7 minutes. Donated a whole box of books. Oh shit. Don't know how I'm gonna move. Moving sucks, dude. It's super stressful, especially if you have animals. Drops? What? Why are they showing Asmongold? Wait. Dude, nobody cares. Asmongold doesn't actually play this game.
What?
Dude, nobody cares. He doesn't play this game.
Oh my god.
Chills.
Whoa. What? An Atlas passive tree? What?
Clueless.
Oh my god. Whoa. Holy shit. Wait, what is that? Oh my god!
Fake overreactions? Nah, not fake overreactions, because I did the same thing. Okay, I think everyone knew that this was like the natural progression, or at least like a lot of people have been playing this game a long time, figured that this was probably pretty likely. But like seeing it and being excited to use it is more the reaction than being like super surprised at a huge skill tree.
What?
New items, yeah. Give me the juice. Atlas wide passive tree.
E.
Oh!
Oh.
Atlas passive tree fucking huge. You see that?
Yo, they put that on the stream. That's fucking huge. Okay, everybody's saying fuck.
Oh shit.
Official Chris propaganda. I don't, cause like, mine was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I just kept saying oh shit over and over and over and over.
Yo.
So like, it is kind of weird to look back at this and like laugh at everyone, be like cringe over reactions, but no,
Yo, chill.
I was there. Did he say chills? Did he say yo chills or yo chill? Cause that's two very different things.
Oh my god, the Atlas passive 3 puggies!
Dude, why is the music so loud, dude? Matt Hill. There needs to be a chills emote. There is. It's a bat chest.
Well, that's a lot of stuff happening right now.
I think he said chills. Yeah.
That's a big tree, dude. That's a big skill tree.
Now, what do you mean a chills emote? Bat chest? Yeah. It's bat chest.
Oh my god. The Atlas facets. Oh my god.
What?
Hey, well, who the hell is that? The physics?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What the hell is this off-brand bullshit? Is that physics at home? I'm pissed. Our streamer? Nah, not your streamer. Yo, that was the most, dude, that was the most brain delay shit. I like how they were both sitting there the whole time and it was just like...
Now.
React harder, strummer. It's so funny looking at this shit later. Look at, dude, it's a passive tree. Yeah, what about it?
Atlas wide passive tree.
That's the most emotion that Waggle's ever shown in his life. Believe it or not. Nice. They put the timer on this guy's tag, so I don't know who the hell he is. Rip. Sorry, guy. Nobody knows who you are.
What the fuck? That's the Atlas passive?
Keep listening to the same like 5-second soundbite. They put the timer on JP's face.
What? What? What the f is that?
What? They grabbed this from a YouTube video. Because she's censored.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Atlas wide passive tree.
Chris reacting to his own content. Weird champ. Co.
Oh, hey. Wow.
Co's got mad dad energy.
So we fracture outwards. An Atlas wide. What? What do you mean an Atlas wide passive tree? What the fuck? Yo.
That was like the biggest reaction by far, dude. You guys see his eyes?
What the fuck? What the fuck? Oh.
Do you think Chris has this on loop while he does naughty things? What, like nerf the tree that they're showing right now? Is that what you mean by naughty things? I like how the music is like deafeningly loud in every single one of these clips, and you can barely hear them except when they start screaming.
Goodbye to regional Atlas passive trees and hello to a single gigantic
All right,
Atlas
boys.
passive tree.
10 seconds.
Good old
It's that time
Sentinel.
again.
This new tree has over 600 passives available to choose from, and you can earn 117.
Haha. Need 4 headers?
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson
Hi,
from
Chris.
Grinding Gear Games. Thanks for joining us
turn it up,
today
guys.
as we reveal Path of Exile's
Oh,
next
just kidding.
expansion, Sentinel, which
There you go.
launches on PC and Mac on May 13th,
Too loud.
and on Xbox and PlayStation on May 18th.
Alright,
Twitch drops are enabled for today's live stream, so make sure you follow the instructions below to link your account and earn your Rapture wings.
YouTube frogs, if you come over to my Twitch channel and watch
February,
this,
we
you
launched
guys can
Siege
get
of
the
Atlas,
wings, but they don't
an
have it
expansion
enabled for
that
YouTube,
drastically
to my knowledge.
changed Path of Exile's mapping endgame. It removed Atlas regions and Watchstones and introduced the gigantic Atlas-wide passive tree and 4 new Pinnacle bosses to challenge. One other very important aspect of the new endgame is its modularity. We designed it in a way where it's easy to expand with more content, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Alongside the Sentinel Challenge League, this expansion doubles down on the best parts of Siege of the Atlas to give you ultimate control over your endgame experience. Here's what you can expect from today's live stream. We'll start with a trailer for the Sentinel expansion, and then we'll go through its content and features in detail, starting with how the
Game
new
balance.
Sentinel Challenge League lets you control your level of risk and reward.
Quality of
We'll
life
then move on to the
improvements.
improvements we have made to Path of Exile's endgame. We'll discuss modifications to the Atlas-wide passive tree, the introduction of 20 Atlas Keystone passives, new variations on Pinnacle boss fights, and powerful unique items designed by the winners of our Siege of the Atlas boss kill event. Following that, we'll discuss the type of balance changes we're making, or more interestingly, not making in this expansion. We'll then cover what we're doing with magic and rare monster modifiers, various quality of life improvements, and the full release of controller support for PC players. After showing you our latest supporter packs, I'll head into a live Q&A with community streamer Ziggy D, where we'll answer your questions. Once that finishes, we'll post the expansion's full patch notes. There's a lot to cover, so let's roll the trailer for Sentinel.
Lie to me, Chris. Chris Howard, tell me.
In the wake of your power,
$500
something
MTX.
has arisen. Dark Sentinels, hungry for a share. But these cruel constructs can be harnessed. Take them, bind them to your will. Test and tinker, combine and reconfigure. And together, you will find your fortune. Some Sentinels are powerful. Others are dangerous. But in a world with shifting stars, monstrous new
Keystones.
threats,
Uber
and
bosses.
valuable treasures,
They actually added Ubers.
you will need them.
Yo, they actually added fucking Ubers.
The Sentinels
Oh, shit.
await your command.
They actually added Ubers. There's, dude. No fucking way.
I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so let's get started with a full
Uber
explanation
serious?
of the upcoming Sentinel Challenge League. Sentinels are ancient constructs that have been unearthed across Rayclast. In this league, you will collect these Sentinels and attempt to harness their great power. But this symbiosis is not without risks. Once deployed, a Sentinel follows you, watching and waiting for you to enter combat. As you encounter enemies, the Sentinel will fire a beam that doesn't damage the enemy, but rather empowers them. This not only amplifies the difficulty of the foe, but also the rewards that it yields. There are 3 classes of Sentinels that you will find as you kill monsters in this league. Stalker Sentinels will follow you for around 30 seconds, empowering dozens of monsters before they dissipate. This is like a build-your-own breach or delirium effect, because you control what monsters you're fighting when you deploy the Sentinel,
This
and
looks
through various
weird.
means that we'll
This has
describe
the potential to
shortly,
be a really
you're
good
also in
mechanic.
control of how much the monsters are empowered. In contrast to Stalker Sentinels, Pandemonium Sentinels are designed for mass area of effect, and typically only fire 1 shot. But this shot really counts, chaining between monsters to affect an entire screen full of foes at once. This class of Sentinel can be very dangerous because it empowers so many enemies at one time. The final class, Apex Sentinels, can only empower rare or unique enemies. They fire fewer shots but have a much larger impact on difficulty and reward. You start with a single slot to equip a Stalker Sentinel, but as you play through the league, you can eventually unlock 2 more Sentinel slots so that you can have 1 Sentinel of each class equipped at a time. Each class of Sentinel can be deployed only once per area that you play. You'll quickly develop various strategies for when each class of Sentinel is best used. For example, saving your Pandemonium Sentinel for when you're surrounded by monsters, or using your Apex Sentinel on the map boss or league content that spawns several rare monsters. With a full loadout of Sentinels equipped, in every map you'll get to empower bosses of your choice, choose up an entire screen at once with a button press, and choose the part of the map where it's best to empower a series of dozens of monsters. Sentinels cannot be damaged by monsters in combat, but do gradually deplete their internal power supply each time you use them. They can be found as you play and are incompatible with traditional Rayclastian crafting techniques. However, new Sentinels with different properties can be assembled from the depleted husks of others that you have used until their internal power supplies ran out. We'll explain that crafting process in more detail later on. Okay. You can find magic Sentinels that have mods on them. These mods can augment the base properties of a Sentinel, extending its duration, making it empower monsters faster, increasing the number it can empower, or even the degree to which the monsters are empowered, affecting both their difficulty and rewards. Some mods will add specific drops, such as currency items, essences, or unique items, to monsters empowered by the Sentinel, but at the cost of increasing how difficult the monster is to defeat. You can also occasionally find rare Sentinels that have more than 2 mods on them. These are generally quite a lot more powerful than normal or magic Sentinels if you find the right combination of mods.
Jesus.
The Sentinels you find as you explore Rayclast will become more powerful. Some particularly powerful ones with special properties can only come from the process of assembling new Sentinels from depleted ones. While the Sentinels you find generally get better and better as you play through the league, you can also upgrade the behavior and properties of Sentinels through your Sentinel Controller. The Sentinel Controller is like a runic circuit board. It's what powers your Sentinels and allows you to customize them. There are specific nodes for each of the 3 types of Sentinel, so you can customize the properties and behavior of all of them, or potentially focus on your favorite base types. As you play through the league and kill more and more enemies affected by your Sentinels, your controller will gain power. You start with 4 units, which is enough to power your first Sentinel slot and your first runic node. By the endgame, you are able to work up to 30 power units, which is enough for almost half of the controller to be powered at once. So how do you choose which runic nodes to power? You do this by connecting them together with filaments. Power flows from the top of the circuit through the filaments until it is all in use by the nodes you have connected. You can set up filaments in advance and they'll automatically be used as more power becomes available. Moving filaments around has no cost. It's basically like a planning tool that gradually gets activated as you gain more power throughout the league. So you're not locked into a specific plan and you can respec for free at any time. Some powerful runic nodes require 2 filaments and hence allocate more of your power when activated. Additional Sentinel slots for other types like Pandemonium and Apex Sentinels, for example, require 3 filaments and hence 3 power units each. While it's almost always best to have all 3 slots powered so you can use all 3 Sentinels per area, there are niche strategies where you want to unpower specific Sentinel slots in order to have more power for additional runic nodes, also that you can fully specialize in just 1 or 2 Sentinel types. Just to reiterate, you can change your allocation as much as you like, so feel free to experiment. This powerful runic node allows Pandemonium Sentinels to be used an additional time each area. While this is basically pure upside, you should definitely plan around the fact that you'll be running their charge down pretty quickly if you use this node. This runic node prevents your Stalker Sentinels from empowering normal rarity enemies. While this seems very powerful at first because you'll just be empowering magic, rare, or unique enemies that benefit greatly from the boost of item drops, you should be aware that unless you have a large source of special enemies, you'll be fighting against the flight duration of your Sentinels and will probably want to build around increasing their duration. While the Sentinel Controller lets you specialize how the different classes of Sentinels behave, it's generally not necessary to have to modify it for each new Sentinel that you equip. The runic nodes you have chosen represent your overall strategy for each class of Sentinel and rarely need to be tweaked if you swap one Sentinel for another. As you use Sentinels in combat across a number of maps, they eventually run out of charge and will become depleted. But they don't need to be thrown away when this occurs. You can find power cores that let you assemble a new Sentinel with a full charge. This process disassembles two existing Sentinels and creates a hybrid of the two, with their properties combined together. Right-clicking a power core opens up an assembly screen. If you insert two Sentinels and click the Assemble button, a new, fully charged one will be created.
It's the MTX combination UI.
This process is a complex and unpredictable one that can either inherit properties from the input Sentinels or potentially produce new ones that weren't based on either of them. For example, the base type of the Sentinel could either be the left input Sentinel, the right input Sentinel, or an entirely new one that can't spawn naturally and can only come from this process. The same applies to its modifiers. You generally get a mix of modifiers from the two input Sentinels, but sometimes they have their tiers upgraded or entirely new mods added, occasionally including ones that are exclusive to the assembly process. The end result is that you're usually getting Sentinels that are similar in function to the depleted ones you have combined, but occasionally mutate in new ways, producing results that unlock more power and possibilities.
Explanation's
The
kind of
best
whatever.
Sentinels in the game will come from lucky combinations of depleted Sentinels that have just the right mods. It's also possible to assemble two Sentinels directly into one of the many valuable unique Sentinels.
Ah. Wow.
Specialized power cores exist, which influence the
guys see
assembly
that?
process to greatly increase the chances of various interesting outcomes occurring. They don't guarantee anything, but are absolutely worth considering if you're trying to hit unlikely assembly results. You may want to accumulate a small collection of depleted Sentinels so that you have options to assemble together. That's where the Sentinel Locker comes
What are
in.
these
It's a
builds
free
they
object
use?
that you can place in your hideout that allows you to store stacks of each of the Sentinel currency items, as well as a tab full of each of the 3 categories of Sentinel. You can also store Sentinels in regular stash tabs, and they can be freely traded with other players. The
Yeah.
Sentinel Locker's affinity for Sentinels will also work with regular stash tabs while this league is active. As I hinted at before, you can find or create unique Sentinels. These have powerful static properties, but because they cannot be combined with other Sentinels, there's no way to recharge them once they become depleted. They are essentially limited use items with powerful effects. Let's look at a few
They
examples.
changed Fortify.
First off, we have the Basilisk. This is a
He got
Pandemonium
17
Sentinel
Fortify
that
as soon as he
augments
touched
its
the
wide
boss.
area of effect blast with a petrification effect. Any monsters caught in the blast are turned to stone. Rather than being primarily useful for raising the risk and reward of combat like other Sentinels, this one is incredibly useful as an emergency button in combat. By activating the Basilisk, you can freeze most of the monsters around you in place, letting you take control of dangerous situations. This unique Sentinel, the Hollow-Eyed Skull, is basically a headhunter in
Oh,
Sentinel
what the
form.
fuck?
There are also a set of unique Sentinels that are designed to empower specific named Atlas map bosses. If you activate one of these Sentinels while fighting that boss, it empowers the boss into an extremely dangerous version that is very, very rewarding if you can defeat it. The highly empowered boss fight is further scaled by whatever mods are on the map that contain it, so you'll want to be pretty careful with
Some
what
of
mods you choose
the
to use.
mechanics in the league are like OP as fuck.
On the other hand, its rewards are scaled by reward bonuses on that map, so if you're able to
they
defeat
definitely
one of these
buffed
bosses in a
Cyclone
juiced map,
based
you will
off the
certainly
trailer
be greatly
footage.
rewarded.
And
These highly
they
empowered map bosses are the
buffed
best source of
Fortify.
recombinators, a
because
new
he
type
was
of
playing
endgame
Cyclone,
currency
he hit
item
the
that can
map
be
boss
found in
and
the
got full
Sentinel
stacks
League.
instantly.
Recombinators allow you to apply the Sentinel assembly process to 2 pieces of equipment of the same item class, combining them together in unpredictable ways. This process can also rarely imbue your items with exclusive modifiers that don't normally spawn on that type of item. While the recombination process involves significant risks, you could combine the best parts of 2 rare items together, maybe getting a lucky exclusive mod spawn, and end up with one of the best weapons, armor pieces, or jewelry in Path of Exile.
This is RNG
Sentinels can be
spot.
deployed while engaging in other League content, so you can juice the risk and reward to quite
Jesus.
crazy levels. For example, you could enter a Mirror of Delirium, trigger a breach, and deploy your Sentinel at the same time,
Free trip to
causing the monsters
standard.
to have 3 significant modifiers to both their difficulty and rewards. There are only a few specific areas that Sentinels can't be deployed in,
Oh, look at
mostly
that
for
breach
technical
density,
reasons,
guys.
and those are unique maps, Pinnacle Atlas bosses, and the Simulacrum. So that's Sentinel in a nutshell. It's a combat league that gives you heaps of control over the exact risk and reward you encounter. It stacks with other combat-enhancing league mechanics, juices your endgame bosses beyond any kind of reasonable difficulty, lets you play with temporary headhunters, and might even let a few players assemble some pretty insane rare items if they're lucky. We're very much looking forward to seeing your stories after you've had a chance to play with it next week.
Cool. Show me the new stuff, Chris.
In addition to the Sentinel Challenge League, this expansion
Yes.
further improves on the new endgame introduced in Siege of the Atlas, its Atlas-wide passive tree and Pinnacle boss fights. The new endgame was designed to give you ultimate control over what kind of content you want to play and how difficult and rewarding you want it to be. With the Sentinel expansion, we are doubling down on what makes this new endgame the best one that Path of Exile has ever had. This expansion introduces 20 powerful Keystone passives to the Atlas tree. As you know from the regular passive skill tree, Keystone passives are usually dramatic and
There's
build-changing,
one for Maven.
with both
the bottom
upsides
right.
and potential downsides. Each Keystone can completely change the way you play Path of Exile's endgame, and we have designed Keystone passives for many different playstyles and
A
situations.
lot of these are bosses.
The
Most of them.
second big change is that we have introduced these clusters of passives that grant you even more control over what endgame content you encounter.
Oh, that's
As
cool.
you know, you can encounter many different types of
Oh,
past
that's
league
super
content
cool.
randomly within maps. These
That's
new
super cool.
passives allow you to prevent content you don't enjoy from appearing randomly, while simultaneously causing other content to spawn at a higher rate. Aside
all
from the
together.
obvious
That's
convenience
so
of
good.
only encountering the past league mechanics that you choose, the system is great for target farming specific content that you have juiced on your Atlas tree. Thirdly, we have created incredibly difficult and rewarding Uber versions of 7 Pinnacle boss fights, which can be accessed via 6 new Keystone passives. These fights are designed to challenge the absolute best Path of Exile players, and suffice to
this
say,
is so
they are
hype.
brutally difficult. Let's take a look at some of the new Keystones. and
Every
boss
one of his
fights.
attacks is a die beam.
The
Oh
singular
my
focus
God.
Keystone makes it significantly more likely that your favored maps will drop. If a map drops that is not one of your favored maps, it will be converted into a random currency item. This means that you'll exclusively see your favorite maps, and
Yo.
outside of that, more currency. This is the realization of the I only want to play one map dream that some players have. It also helps players who are over-sustaining maps and would rather just get extra currency items. The Stream of Consciousness Keystone prevents you from modifying your maps with fragments or scarabs, but means that when extra content is being rolled for your maps, each of the base chances is 50% higher.
Oh, that's
This
sick.
is really useful for
That's
players who don't
huge
want to have to
SSF.
think about juicing their maps and
Huge
would
for
instead
SSF.
prefer to get a constant moderate bonus instead. The following 2 Keystones are for very advanced players who have completed their Atlas trees and want to get a very specific outcome with all of their skill points.
Wow.
The Wandering Path Keystone increases the effect of small passives on your Atlas skill tree and disables all notable passives.
They nerfed the duplicate. Did they?
The Grand Design
No, it
Keystone
was always
increases
0.5,
the
wasn't
monster
it?
pack size in each of your maps by an amount proportional to the number of notable passives you have allocated. However, the trade-off is that small passives have no effect. These 2 Keystones are very good for specializing into maximizing pack size and quantity
Nice
at the
shot.
expense of specific league content, which is great for general Magic Find builds or Divination card farmers. The Twist of Fate Keystone changes the behavior of corrupted rare maps in unpredictable ways. Upon entering a
No.
map, you may be sent to an alternative map of the same tier with randomized modifiers.
Nah.
All of the master missions, scarabs, and Kirit crafts applied to the map will also be randomized.
Free trip to
This process
standard.
will not pick an outcome that was already on the map, so it always shifts it to a new property that you didn't have before. This means that you can play all of the scarabs, master missions, and maps that you enjoy, and any leftover ones can be randomized to new outcomes, which are guaranteed to not be the ones you started with. This may have some interesting economic consequences as well, with players feeding bad scarabs or maps into the Twist of Fate lottery. The Wellspring of Creation and Dance of Destruction Keystones change the ratios of monster life and damage in maps on the Atlas, so that they are more dangerous and less tanky, or vice versa. These 2
What?
Keystones are designed to be remedial, allowing players with an abundance of offense or defense to normalize themselves so that they can handle the content better. If you find yourself in a situation where you're waiting for a weapon upgrade or can't fix your resistances, then you could allocate one of these Keystones to temporarily make things easier, before unallocating it later when your build is complete. 6 new Keystones create Uber versions of Path of Exile's Pinnacle boss fights.
Holy
Venarius,
fuck.
Cyrus, the Maven, the Searing Exarch,
Uber
the Eater of
Maven?
Worlds, and the Shaper and Uber Elder, who I guess is now called the Uber Elder?
Uber Elder. What?
Allocating one of these keystones on your Atlas passive tree ramps up the corresponding boss fights so that it is extremely difficult. Like, really hard.
fuck.
Harder than saying goodbye to Zana hard.
Oh, fuck.
Only allocate these keystones if your character is extremely powerful and you know you can handle the challenge.
Okay,
In general,
Slam's really
the
big.
encounter's rules are modified to be far more punitive and difficult. In return, though, you can earn
So
some
this is
very
Gauntlet
enticing
Shaper.
rewards. Each of the Uber fights has an additional high chance reward and a chance of getting a very, very rare chase reward. For example, the Uber Maven guarantees an elevated sextant if you're able to complete the encounter.
Bricked.
Very rarely, though, you may be able to earn an awakened exceptional support gem as well, such as Empower, Enlighten, or Enhance.
Jesus.
These keystones unlock crazy battles that will challenge our most aspiring players who are deep in Path of Exile's endgame. They add a new level of difficulty for those who want to push their builds even farther than they ever have before.
Wow.
The keystones we have shown you so far are designed around many different types of endgame players.
Shaper
Some
bullet
glass
hell with
cannon
no
players struggle
emblem.
with defenses but have no problem with offense.
That
Some
has
players
to
want to
hit
just play one map.
less than
Some
it did
players want
before.
the difficulty to be ramped up and to receive rewards commensurate with this added challenge. The keystones also let you identify a specific reward, type of content, or playstyle and know exactly how you can get the most out of it. There are a number of other new keystones that we'll reveal before release. Like the ones we have shown you today, these keystones require you to consider your endgame plan in an entirely new light. We're very interested to see what strategies you will use to try to conquer the new Uber Pinnacle bosses. Before we get into the new unique items, there are a few other endgame Atlas changes that we should cover. We are removing Vinctar's Square and Doryani's Machinarium from the Atlas of Worlds because they are not natural
Good.
map drops.
Delete them.
You can still get and play these maps, of course, but they aren't counted for your overall Atlas completion anymore.
Good.
Their Atlas passive points have been moved to rewards for defeating the Infinite Hunger and the Black Star. We have rebalanced influence altars and maps. They now feel a lot different than they did in the form they were introduced in Siege of the Atlas. Their downsides now feel more impactful and they have more diversity of rewards, including new rewards. The
Good.
intention is to fulfill the
I
original
complained about this
design
a lot.
goal of having an ultimatum-like choice about whether you want to accept additional challenge for additional reward. We've added better Atlas tree support for them, including 2 keystones that can affect them.
Good.
We've also rebalanced the drop weightings of the new Pinnacle Atlas bosses,
Good.
changing the relative drop weightings of their unique rewards and making them more likely to drop Eldritch currency. Currently, in Siege of the Atlas, Elder and Shaper Scarabs are basically worthless because their
True.
influence is worse than the free influence you can get from the Eater of Worlds and the Searing Exarch.
Oh, shit.
In Sentinel, you can now apply multiple types of influence to one map, so you could have Eater of Worlds influence alongside a Shaper or Elder Scarab on a Conqueror map.
That is crazy.
Together,
you
these
guys.
3 influences combined have a very large effect on that map,
That's
and this will
fucking
make Elder and Shaper
crazy.
Scarab significantly more desirable.
That is.
The start point of encountering Shaper, Elder, or Conqueror influence and influence items has been raised to level 81 areas. We've also fixed an issue that was causing some players to skip playing most of the contents of maps. On the lower half of the Atlas passive tree, there were a lot of small skills that granted a 2% chance for the map boss to drop an additional map.
Mhm.
This meant that it was possible to sustain maps by rushing to those
This
bosses
was
and
100%
ignoring
gonna end
every
there.
other monster in the map. We have retained the overall bonus, but have changed it so the map drops from a random monster within the map rather than the boss.
Aha. That's interesting. I like that. That's fine. No more city square rush.
We're also addressing an issue with the way that you acquire Maven boss fight invitations. Currently, it's possible that you get hit with a bad streak of RNG and haven't found an invitation by the time you have enough bosses witnessed. You can now purchase these invitations from Kirak for a moderate price if you need to.
Nice.
At the launch
Okay.
of the Siege of the Atlas expansion, we hosted a competition
This
that
is
saw
big.
players
This
racing
is big.
to the first to kill Path of Exile's
This is
Pinnacle
big for
bosses
ATS
in
and stuff.
hardcore solo self-found mode. The main prize for doing so was the ability to collaborate with us on the design of a unique item that would drop from a boss in Path of Exile's endgame. 5 of these uniques have been designed so far and will be featured in this expansion. The 6th one will be released once the winner has time to design it, very likely in 3.19. Call of the Void is a new cold-themed ring that was designed by Lighty and will drop from the Uber Elder. It causes all damage to chill and causes chilled enemies to shatter on death,
That's
as
crazy.
though they were frozen. On top of this, chilled enemies deal less damage back to you based on the magnitude of the chill affecting
That's
them.
crazy.
The only drawback is that all incoming
Let's
damage
go,
also
Darky.
chills you, but there are many ways to mitigate this, and in some cases it's beneficial to builds that utilize self-chill as part of some crazy combo.
Doesn't
This
matter,
ring
there's
is
no
useful
life
for
on
a
it.
wide variety of different
That's
endgame
OP.
builds.
Less damage taken based on chill.
Echoes of Creation is a new unique helmet, also
War
designed
Cry.
by Lighty, which will drop from the Shaper. It's designed for builds that use Warcries and grants an extra use before cooldown to Warcry skills that are socketed in the helmet. It also grants more damage to exerted attacks based on the number of Warcries affecting them, but causes you to take damage when you use these attacks.
Ew, what the fuck?
The self-damage number looks really scary, but it can be mitigated by various mechanics such as
Berserker.
armor, endurance charges, and life recovery. This powerful niche helmet is ideal for characters that try to use as many Warcries as they can. The third Lighty unique being introduced is the Burden of Truth, a unique belt which will drop from Cyrus. Broadly speaking, this belt encourages you to have healthy energy shield and life pools and helps you to achieve this by granting you additional energy shield based on a percentage of your maximum life value. The belt both lets some portion of chaos damage hit your energy shield, but also causes some non-chaos damage to bypass your energy shield like it was chaos damage. This is often an upside because splitting damage over both life and energy shield lets you recover both simultaneously. The Supreme Decadence Keystone that this belt grants, which is previously restricted to timeless jewels, causes your life flasks to apply to both your life and energy shield at a reduced rate.
That is
Overall, this belt is extremely powerful for characters who can build to have a decent energy shield pool while also
that's the
using life
Inquisitor
flasks
belt.
appropriately.
That's the new Inquisitor Soul Tether. That looks
The
pretty
fourth
good.
new item that we're featuring today was created by Waggle. It's an amulet called the Eternal Struggle, which will drop from either the Infinite Hunger or the Black Star. The amulet has a pair of Eldritch mods, and the one that is dominant will be based on which of the bosses dropped it. The dominant mod also controls whether the amulet gives a Malignant Madness or Culling Strike bonus. You'll need to work out which of the two bosses to farm based on which half of the amulet you want to activate. The final unique we're showcasing today was designed by Skelly Mage. It's a unique jewel that drops from the Maven. The jewel refers to a random keystone on your passive skill tree and enables you to be able to allocate passives within a radius around that keystone without them being connected to the rest of the tree. While the keystone itself cannot
That's
be
fucking
allocated,
cool.
this jewel allows you to jump across great distances on the passive tree in a very skill point efficient way.
That's really cool.
In addition to these uniques that have come from the boss kill competition, we have added new unique items to the Uber Pinnacle boss fights that can be accessed through some of the new Keystone passives. These include a different variation of Thread of Hope that can drop from Uber Cyrus, a new unique jewel which can drop from the Uber Shaper, and special Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels which can roll exclusive Ascendancy notable passives that are not available anywhere else in the game. You'll notice that our last Endgame expansion was just 3 months ago, and we're already extending the Endgame even further. This is our plan for every expansion leading up to the release of Path of Exile 2.
What?
Rather than having a much bigger annual expansion, we plan to add as many endgame improvements into each quarterly expansion as we can, alongside its new challenge league, so that there are new challenges to overcome every time you come back to Path of Exile.
Holy.
One of the subtle but important aspects of our plan is to keep adding powerful new chase rewards to Path of Exile's endgame, so that there are always new reasons to complete aspirational content. The boss kill competitions are great because they not only create these rewards, but also immortalize the achievements of some of Path of Exile's best players. We're going to run another boss kill competition at the launch of Sentinel.
Yeah.
This time, players will have to defeat the Uber versions of boss fights that are unlocked by the special Keystone passives. We'll post full information in the lead up to release.
Does that phase not
We're
end
going to
until
try
you kill the
something
ad?
new with character balance in this expansion. We're
Okay.
intentionally making no changes to character power. That means no nerfs, no buffs, nothing. Every single build and build guide made for Siege of the Atlas will work exactly the same in Sentinel. You can start planning your league starter right now with full confidence about exactly how it's going to play. However, build exploration is still required in 3.18. Sentinel introduces many difficult challenges, both in the Challenge League itself and in the endgame content, and you're going to have to work out a plan to create characters that are able to handle this content. But at this release, you can hit the ground running, knowing with confidence which builds are a good starting point for you. We don't intend to do this character balance freeze every release. For example, 3.19 definitely contains planned changes to character balance. Even though there are no character balance changes in 3.18 though, we have still made some changes to actual game content. For example, let's talk about the changes to monster modifiers. Magic and rare monsters in Path of Exile get a lot of their power from their modifiers. We came up with the majority of the monster mods over a decade ago, and only substantially added to them with the introduction of the Nemesis and Bloodlines leagues in 2013 and 2014. These mods are unfortunately showing their age. Many of them are unimpactful, and it's quite hard to quickly read their descriptions in the heat of combat. What we need is a new set of mods that are highly impactful in combat, keyworded with 1 to 2 colored words that are easy to read at a glance, and capable of producing dangerous combinations. This is exactly what we designed the Arch Nemesis mods to be, a replacement for the core monster mod pool. From 3.18 onwards, all previous monster mods have been replaced by Arch Nemesis mods. No other part of the Arch Nemesis League has been retained, so there's no more inventory or recipe management. Magic monsters have 1 Arch Nemesis mod, shared across their pack, and rare monsters typically have 2 mods. However, it's possible to encounter rare monsters with 3 or even 4 Arch Nemesis mods on them. Combinations of multiple synergistic mods can create quite interesting situations in combat. For example, if you encounter a monster with both Storm Strider and Ice Prison, the Ice Prison may block you off so that you are more likely to run into the lightning mirages from the Storm Strider mod. We've done a balance pass over the Arch Nemesis mods before making them core. Some have certainly had their power reduced, particularly when applied to magic monsters. We have also changed how monster experience and drops are calculated, so it's now far more about the difficulty of the mods than about the proportional size of the monster. Various Nemesis and Bloodlines modifiers that were not represented in the Arch Nemesis mod pool have been added in different ways. Path of Exile's challenge system has remained the same for the last 21 leagues. For Sentinel, we had a look at whether there were any easy ways we could update it based on what we have learned over the last 6 years. Our plan is to retain the model of 40 challenges with rewards that unlock as you progress through them, but with a goal of providing substantially more challenge to endgame players and substantially more rewards to go with it, of course. In order to achieve this, we have crunched down the easier challenges so that the first reward unlocks after only 6 and the second at 12. These are equivalent in difficulty to 12 and 24 challenges from the old system, respectively. This change gives us a lot more space to ramp up to some incredibly difficult challenges towards the end, which will take a lot of time and skill to complete. There are now 10 different rewards you can unlock, which comprise 2 complete armor sets, each with a pair of wings. But be warned, the challenges you must complete are much, much harder than any that we have ever set you before.
The base one looks better.
We've been experimenting with support for game controllers on the PC version of Path of Exile. During the Arch Nemesis League, we began a beta for controller support and have been making improvements based on your suggestions and feedback. We're pleased to announce that controller support on PC will officially launch alongside the Sentinel expansion. This also means that Path of Exile is now fully playable on the Steam Deck for those of you who are lucky enough to have one so far. Alongside finishing controller support for PC, we've also done a push on various small quality of life features in this expansion, which we'll reveal over the coming days. An example is that you can now choose whether your hideout portals can be accessed by one of 4 options: everyone, your friends, your guild members, or no one. We have also improved how favored maps are selected on the Atlas.
Shift click,
Rather
please.
than having to click on the map on the Atlas for
Shift
every
click.
slot, you can instead click on one of your existing favored maps to quickly copy it to the new slot. This makes it a lot faster to favor many instances
Still
of the
annoying.
same map at once. There are plenty more small QOL features crammed into Sentinel, and we'll cover these over the week leading up to release. Early in the Arch Nemesis League, we debuted Kerrick's Vault
No,
Pass.
dude, no.
Purchasing this pass
No.
grants you access to Kerrick's Vault, where you can claim
I
exclusive
am
unique
so
item skins as you
fucking
complete map
sad
bonus
right now.
objectives in the Atlas Endgame. The Vault Pass for the Arch Nemesis League is only available for a few more days and will leave the store forever when this league ends. There's no penalty for purchasing the pass late in the league after you've wrapped up your map completion. So if you are pleased with where you got to in Arch Nemesis and want to lock in your unique skins, it's not too late to buy your pass now. Thank you to everyone who unlocked Kerrick's Vault. We had a lot of fun putting it together and trying to think of fun ways that unique item skins can interact with gameplay in a visual way. The purchases directly fund development of both Path of Exile 1 and 2. A brand new Vault Pass will launch alongside the Sentinel League. Like the previous one, there are 8 exclusive unique item skins that can be unlocked as you complete map bonus objectives. We'll post full details on these new rewards closer to launch. To buy either the Arch Nemesis Pass now, before it leaves the store forever, or the Sentinel one when the expansion launches, go to pathofexile.com/vault. Alongside today's livestream, we're launching 2 new series of supporter packs, the Arcanist and Reaper packs. Each tier contains the pack's full face value in points, plus several exclusive microtransactions. These packs are only available during the Sentinel League and will leave the store forever in 3 months. Every microtransaction you're about to see is entirely cosmetic and does not affect your character's progression or power. The Arcanist pack series contains 7 exclusive microtransactions. The Cloak of Elements indicates the power of your fire, cold, and lightning resistances on your back. When a resistance is capped, the effect is extra strong. While wearing the Ring of the Black Star, your level up effect looks like this. In the Timekeeper's hideout, you can use the Chronosphere to change the time of day from dawn to noon to dusk to night.
That's cool.
With Chevron's tome on your belt, identifying items will cause exploding books to appear nearby.
Okay.
The Mage Bloom map device blossoms with greater intensity as you open higher tier maps. With the soul-stunning weapon effect attached to your weapon, any attacks that stun will cause your enemies to have an out-of-body experience. Drinking from the searing Quicksilver flask causes an explosion and sets your character on fire. The Reaper Pack series also has 7 exclusive cosmetic microtransactions.
No armor?
The Soul Harvester's Cloak's power is based on the number of enemies your character has killed. With the Belt of the Hive Queen equipped, flasks you use will cause blood-sucking insects to appear all over your character.
What the fuck?
The Ghostlit Graveyard is a hideout where you can control the color of its torches. It also comes with 6 exclusive hideout decorations. Medidrone will follow you around and use a healing beam on you whenever you're gaining life. Thanks, Medidrone. The Underworld Portal opens a gateway to Hell. Its effect upgrades in Part 2 and again in maps, where it indicates what tier of map you're playing. While wearing the Ring of the Exorcist, any spells you cast will exorcise the ghosts of your enemies if you crit. While using the Grim Reaper apparition, the Reaper will appear and cull any unique or rare enemies you slay. As I mentioned before, these packs are exclusive to the Sentinel League and will leave the store in 3 months. They're available right now at pathofexile.com/purchase, and they directly fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile 2
thank God they took
and Path of Exile
armor
1 expansions
MTX
like
out.
Sentinel. We greatly appreciate your support.
I'm gonna save so much money.
Thanks for joining us and checking out today's reveals. We can't wait to see you in Rayclast on May
Dude,
13th.
no fucking
We'll begin
way.
the Q&A in a few moments, so please get your questions ready in chat.
Okay, boys. Let's talk it over. Let's talk it over. We got a few minutes before this starts. Okay, I was super on board. 6 months of the same meta. Six months of no new gyms at all. $15 months of seismic trap. 6 months, 6 to 9 months, depending. Most basically, like closer to like 8 months of EA totems. 9 months of Ignite DD. Like the Ubers are, the Ubers is crazy, but it really sucks to know that in order to be able to interface with them at all, I'm gonna have to play Ignite DD, EA Totem, you know what I mean? Because none of the new shit I saw is like, you know, that's not build enabling for like 90% of stuff, you know what I mean? Like there's definitely power creep there, but like, are slams doable? I mean, slams were doable before. The helmets. Hold on. See, the thing, Ben said that his helmet was gonna revive Seismic Cry. Now the thing is, If the last time you played slams was during the rework, they're maybe 20% of what they were then. Hold on, where is it? This section. Oh, they're live already. Fuck.
G'day, Exiles, and welcome back. It is Ziggy D here with none other than Chris Wilson. How you going this morning, Chris?
Hey, good, thanks. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for hosting another Q&A and having me on to ask you some questions. Always a pleasure. I think we have to straight away jump into the last part. This is completely different to my planned order of
yes,
here, but,
Ziggy, please.
Does the Medi drone actually heal you?
Oh,
Everyone
never.
was like, pay to win in chat.
Oh no, it's just an effect that shows when you're getting healed from flasks and stuff, which you can see in the UI already, but this is just a different way of seeing it visually, and that's a theme for a lot of the new microtransaction, is trying a new visual twist on showing information that players already have access to.
Yeah, you guys are kind of stepping it up a little bit there. Although I have to say I wasn't really a fan of the blood-sucking insects one. Why would I pay money for that? That's horrible.
I reckon it's going to be low-key quite popular, because what's going to happen is the packs will eventually go off sale, people will have it, and they'll forget about it, and then you'll see someone covered in insects and think, what is happening?
No, that's my least favorite thing. Thank you. Okay. So I thought we'd kick things off actually with Sentinel first. And I wanted to ask what inspirations led to us having a cute little drone league this time around.
Well, we tried not to make them too cute. So our motivation here was that we wanted to have a combat mechanic that was kind of like a build your own breach kind of thing. Something where you can take combat with you and it doesn't interrupt the flow of gameplay. You know, normally when you're playing like Breach or Delirium, there's a point in the map where we say now it's time for there to be some dynamic combat stuff. And so here we thought, what if we make a mechanic where several different times during a map, the player can choose the right time that they get to deploy their Sentinel and have juiced up combat for a while.
Does a design like this happen with where you come up with the idea first and then the mechanics of it follow on? Or do you have we want to do this mechanically, try and come up with a theme for this?
We came up with mechanics first. In this case, the goal was to have something which tags monsters around you, making them a lot harder and more rewarding. And then from there, we realized we can have complicated mods on this. And it actually started off with a bit of an organic theme. Like our initial random idea, thrown together on a Saturday was that this was some kind of growth on the character that projects something at the monsters. And that's actually why. So computer scientists in the crowd will notice that the method we use for combining Sentinels is very similar to genetic programming, the concept of taking some properties from one, properties from the other, and having a chance of mutation. And that analogy worked well with the organic side, because you're kind of breeding these growths or whatever, but it ended up working a lot better, in terms of understandability, to have Sentinels that follow you around. And the analogy for creating new ones there is that because the power is depleted, you need to create a new one around a power core, and you don't really know how the Sentinels work. Because they're ancient technology. So you're kind of putting it together the best you can, and that's why you get a combination of properties and also some random quirky mutations occasionally.
Nice. I prefer this approach, I think, for a few reasons, but I'm interested in this idea of fantasy technology, ancient lost technologies that are more advanced. That's a theme I love, and it's something that Path of Exile's been doing more and more over time, this sort of ancient, otherworldly, or esoteric technology. Has this always been a plan for PoE's world building, or is it something that's evolved over time?
Well, there was a bit of it there from the beginning with the Val, right? They're a civilization that clearly has a lot of interesting stuff going on that predates what the player is currently doing by thousands of years. And so we'd established the fact that they have stuff like floating machines already. Now, of course, the Sentinels are not Val technology. They're something else that players might be able to piece clues together about. But yeah, we feel it's established that there is ancient technology that's honestly a lot more powerful than what's going on in Rayclast currently.
It's sad when ancient technologies like automatic doors are lost. It's too bad. Maybe we'll rediscover such technologies one day.
It's about the weight of the door.
Oh no. Quote. Perfect. So how much harder do the Sentinels make enemies, and in what ways do they make them harder? I wasn't really clear on that watching it.
So they make combat harder in several ways. From your point of view, the monsters that when they attack you, they're doing damage and more stuff, and when you attack them, they're harder to kill. And this honestly varies a lot depending on the rarity of the monster. With a normal monster, which obviously has very low life and damage to start with, they're buffed a lot more percentage-wise than a rare or unique monster. So if we're applying, like, I don't know, this is me picking a number out of the air, like a 400% buff to a normal monster, we're certainly not applying a 400% buff to Katava. And it's in a way similar to Delirium, it's similar types of scaling. Now, this also depends on the type of Sentinel. For example, the one that empowers the entire screen, the Pandemonium Sentinel, it has a bit less of a buff than the one which is specifically there to target specific monsters, or the one which is a little bit slower at targeting ones, the Stalker Sentinel. And all of this is captured in that empowerment arbitrary number that's scored on the Sentinel. And this is just a number, it doesn't directly correlate to a percentage the player can understand, but it is used internally at different, different scaling amounts depending on what type of monster it is. Generally, more empowerment equals more damage reduction, and of course better rewards. Now, the key thing about this is that we've tried very hard to make sure that empowerment is given to you proportional to any, extra bonuses and stuff you're getting. So it's like with maps where you get pack size and quantity and that kind of thing as you put harder and harder mods on the maps. The same thing is true for your Sentinels, that as you make better and better ones, they'll proportionally get better empowerment to go with it.
Okay. I like the idea that this is like ancient lost technology we don't understand, and also the mechanic is a little bit obscure as well. Was that kind of intentional?
We especially don't want people understanding how the combination process stuff works, but yeah, the general rule is Sentinels give you the opportunity to make combat a lot harder than normal, and in return you'll get rewarded. And there are some cases where the rewards double dip, which are quite interesting that I can talk about.
People sorting through like the game code to better understand mechanics like this has been a thing for as long as Path of Exile's been a thing, but how do you design something like that then that manages to keep some level of obscurity in a system like this?
Well, from a crafting point of view, the rules are all server-side, so we can come up with complicated random things on the server and hope people can't reverse engineer it. On the client, though, I believe there's nothing that they can reverse engineer that will relate to this damage stuff, so we pretty much get to make big spreadsheets on our end, implement it to do that model, and try as much as possible to make sure that players are rewarded for any additional difficulty they have. We don't want a situation where you get a bad Sentinel that's making combat harder and not giving you something for it. And so every bit of additional difficulty will give you additional item quantity, rarity, and experience, notwithstanding any of the other bonuses you get to item drops.
I find that like balancing point of like the obscurity versus players, like if something is learnable, then players feel like they maybe have to learn it as well, whereas the opposite is true as if it's unlearnable in an extent. But at the same time, you have to think about whether players can sort of still engage with the mechanic and feel like they're having some level of control over it. Do you think there's like a level of player control here?
Well, we want to make sure that people understand the core principles of it, even if the actual math behind the scenes is intentionally obfuscated. And the principle here basically is, it's like with other things that juice the combat difficulty, is juice it as much as you can, but not too much, otherwise you'll die. And so there's an extreme level of player control here for a few reasons. Firstly, you choose when to deploy a Sentinel in the map, and which Sentinel to deploy. Secondly, you choose which Sentinel you're using, like what mods it has on it. Are you using a unique? Are you using just a regular magic one? Regular normal or magic one? Have you managed to find a rare with good mods? You have your entire Sentinel controller to spec how you want. And if, for example, the Sentinel combat is too hard, there are ways in your controller to spec more in the direction of rewards and less in the direction of empowerment. And of course, respecking there is free, so it's relatively easy to dynamically adjust the difficulty, so it's never too hard for you, and you're just getting constant rewards from it.
Nice. How much is this affecting the reward then, since we're juicing up these monsters?
The empowerment that affects difficulty also proportionally affects item quantity, rarity, and experience. And you can also get these additional reward icons on monsters. You'll notice in the footage, when the Sentinels empower monsters, occasionally you see like a currency icon or something appear above them, or a unique icon. Now, it's worth noting, there's a base level of monsters giving out these reward icons, of Sentinels giving out these reward icons. So even if you have no mods on the Sentinel and no speccing into anything fancy, you'll occasionally get reward icons. But there are lots of mods that will give you additional reward icons a percentage of the time. Now, these mods are factored into the empowerment number, so it double dips where, because the mod is on the thing, the monster is slightly harder, which means that it stacks more rarity and quant as a side effect. And so you get kind of a double dipping effect there, where you get twice as many, effective rewards.
Double dipping. How often do Sentinels drop, and where do we get them?
Well, you can find Sentinels as you play through the game, and they also drop from Sentinel caches, which are scattered throughout the world. They're pretty often. The intention is not that you run out of Sentinels, right? You'll always have Sentinels to use. The question is whether you have good ones or not. And you'll notice they're corrupted, so you can't just drop AUX on them. It is actually difficult to have a constant supply of good rare Sentinels, but you can put the work in, you can spec into this stuff, you can, do clever combining, and we expect that any good player in Path of Exile will generally have good Sentinels that they can use most of the time. And I understand the concerns that this feels like a bit of micromanagement, but it honestly plays pretty streamlined. Essentially, you can use Sentinels for a number of maps, and there are lots available to drop more ones in as they're depleted. And if you like a Sentinel enough that you miss it when it's run out of power, then that's a really good candidate for combining. Because if you combine two things together and you liked both of them, chances are you're getting something roughly similar out the other end. Occasionally you might get something worse, but sometimes you'll also get something better, and it could get a cool mutation on it where you get some mod which you'd never considered that suddenly starts like duplicating enemies when they're tagged, for example, or doing a lot of other cool stuff. And so we'll see some very interesting things where people are, this is the worst analogy to ever mention on Twitch, but they'll kind of be like breeding a bloodline of good Sentinels, if you see what I mean.
I've been playing Crusader Kings recently. I know all about that. Okay.
I'm going to just switch to Twitch chat. Nice.
How crucial is this like combining up of the Sentinels, and how do you like design a mechanic like this to avoid the like talisman like for the old players of PoE situations where these mechanics become really laborious because there's a lot of combining?
So you don't really combine up through the tiers, you find better tiers of Sentinels. So as you play through the game, you'll find better and better ones. You do combine if you want to have a chance at making Sentinels that have combinations of mods that you like. So the theoretical best Sentinels can come from combining. So in terms of base types, the way it works is there's a progression from low level to high level, just like bows or wands or something like that. And we also have a few other base types that can only come through combining. But once you've got it from combining, you can then potentially persist that one by combining it with other ones and getting lucky. The purpose of combining is when you're finished with two Sentinels you found effective, you get a chance to get something that's moderately similar to what you put in. And that really helps with sustaining rare Sentinels as well as occasionally getting good unique ones and so on. The talisman comparison is a good one, but we have learnt very much from the problems of that league. And the first problem we had with talisman was that the item you were making was competing with amulets, right? It was hard to get good rare talismans, and it was easy to get good rare amulets, so therefore talismans were worthless much of the time. Here, it is hard to get good rare Sentinels, but nothing else can go in that slot, and so it's a bit of a slower item progression than what people are used to. We've definitely designed the combining system to be more of a crafting system, rather than talisman, where you couldn't do stuff on demand. If you wanted to do combining, you had to go and find some stones, do a whole boss fight, etc. Here, you can make new Sentinels wherever you want to.
The item crafting system where you can combine armors in a similar fashion, how similar is that to the Sentinel crafting? Like, will combining a bunch of Sentinels kind of give you an idea of how that's going to then work on items?
Yes, it's quite similar. Basically, we were looking for something you can do to make new, really cool rares, and we realized that we have the system that was entirely designed around the genetic programming of assembling new Sentinels, and it would work really well for rare items. And so we basically tried it, and we came up with a bunch of interesting mods that can go on each of the slots, and I think we haven't previewed any particular ones yet, but the announcement page at pathofexile.com/sentinel has a bunch of mods that people can see in the relevant hovers there, and there's some pretty juiced stuff, so it should get people quite interested. But the intention basically is, this is not meant to be the way that people make the best item in the game, but it may make some of the best items in the game if they're lucky. And we've had conversations internally that involve questions like putting items that are mirror-worthy versus items that are strange on the other side, and interesting border cases that happen with the rules to try to make items that are mirror-worthy come out that, Anyway, interesting stuff going on with that. So we think that the Path of Excel players will really like trying to model how that works and to get the best value for their recombinators.
That's me every time I craft anything in PoE. This won't make the best item in the game, but it may.
It's certainly a non-deterministic crafting thing, but it should be interesting. And I think especially if some of these recombinators make their way into standard, there could be some interesting things that happen after the league ends.
Are there any like hard rules with this recombinator thing, like for getting the specific modifiers, or is it just kind of going to be like very hard to understand?
It's very random, but I'll be more specific about roughly how this works, and this is probably the most information you're getting, right? So you put 2 items in, and it's going to pick one of the 2 base types. So, for example, it'll pick the left or the right. Now, with Sentinels, it has a chance to mutate the base type into a special one or to create a unique. We don't want the recombination process for your equipment to necessarily just randomly change the base type on you or to turn into a unique, because honestly, sometimes that's going to be worth less than the items you put in. So once it's picked a base type, for Sentinels, it uses that base type, and for your items, it retains all the properties of that core base type. For example, any enchants you've got on it, any sockets, corrupted status, implicits, all of that stuff, catalysts or whatever. This all gets dragged along with whichever base type was selected. Then for the explicit mod selection, it basically puts everything in a pool and selects some subset of it. So you get some mods from one of the items, some mods from the other. Sometimes you're unlucky and get way fewer mods than you started with. Sometimes you're lucky and get a whole bunch of good ones you liked. Then there's a chance for various things to occur, like it randomly tinkering with the tiers of the mods or rerolling values. And of course, it can add special mods, basically the mutation outcomes from a special pool. And that's where the really good Sentinel stuff is. You really want to get that available in the pool of stuff that you're combining, because then you get some really, really powerful Sentinels. Obviously, relatively optional, of course, the Sentinels work well without those mods, but they're a lot more powerful with them. And the same is true for regular rare items. If you are doing this basically recombination lottery, you get the ability to get, like, keystones on body armors and that kind of stuff, which could be pretty useful for some builds.
Fun. That does sound like a lot of fun. Back to gameplay on Sentinel for a little bit. What's to stop players from using a Sentinel on a boss like right before it dies to subvert the challenge?
Right, so basically when a monster is empowered, it is fully healed. And most of the time, Sentinels empower monsters before you get a chance to get to that monster, and so there's no problem whatsoever. If you were to, try to cheese a boss down to low life and then bring your Sentinel out, then yes, you do have to fight it again. It's worth noting, by the way, one of the pieces of consistent feedback we've had internally when people first see our promotional material before they've played the League is they say, well, with Path of Exile clear speed what it is, this is going to be so lame because the Sentinels are slow at tagging monsters and therefore I have to wait for them all the time. When they play the League, they realize it's very, very easy to spec into a Sentinels are very fast at tagging monsters and chain through monsters, and you get multiple beams, multiple chains, lots of tagging speed. And generally speaking, we've tested on very fast map characters, and if you spec correctly, there's no problem whatsoever with the Sentinels staying ahead of you. And of course, you have ones that hit a whole screen at once. The other thing to note is, and this is something that we didn't really emphasize there, is the Sentinels tag up to a specific number of monsters. So this means the one that tags a whole screen, you don't need to go and grab the entire map. Like, you don't have to have this lame playstyle where you pull the whole map to one place and then hit go to get everything tagged. It does have a limit. And this also means that as long as you're killing fast enough and the Sentinel's tagging stuff fast enough that you use its full limit, then it doesn't really matter if it misses hitting a couple of monsters due to you being so OP, because you'll still get full value out of that Sentinel.
Okay. How does co-op work in Sentinel? I'm always interested in this question.
So basically with co-op, we've tried really hard to make sure that it doesn't penalize players. Both players can use their Sentinels in a map. A monster can only be tagged by only empowered by one Sentinel at once, but they can tag more monsters in an instance. When we're doing leagues, we try very hard to make sure nowadays that you're not in any way penalized for being in a party. So technically speaking, yes, playing in a party would let you tag an awful lot of monsters.
Yeah, that's I thought it would only be like the map creator or something, but I like that a lot more.
There's some good griefing opportunities where, like, your guy you're playing with is waiting to tag the map boss with an Apex Sentinel, so you just hit your Pandemonium one faster than him and just tag the map boss really quickly. This is immediately what comes to mind for me.
That's fine though, because like if you're playing in a party, you should be like trying to work together, and if you're not, well,
are you sure? My first experience with multiplayer Diablo 2 was we were killing Duriel in a public Battle.net game. This is back like 22 years ago, and I'm playing an Amazon. So Duriel dies, drops Worm Skull, grab it as fast as I can, and the Necro says, "Who got that?" And I say nothing. So that's the history behind multiplayer play for me.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Oh, that's why we have being able to kill each other at the bandits.
Honestly, yeah, it's nice for there to be some sharp edges occasionally.
Yeah. The bandit one's always like such an easy thing to forget as well.
Yeah. And chat's right, this is ninja looting, not scamming. We didn't have a deal. We didn't have no. He wasn't helping me with Duriel. I was helping him.
It's very different. Okay. Okay. With league mechanics like this, when they're itemized in some way, it inevitably comes up. You have to make a decision about whether they're tradable or not. So what keeping things tradable is often much more in the spirit of Path of Exile, I find. We've sometimes seen this actually makes players less willing to use the mechanic themselves, like for Expedition, for example, where people were selling all of their currency instead of using it. What goes into the decision to make something like Sentinel tradable?
So, in general, tradability is preferred, especially when there's other forms of progression. Like in Arch Nemesis, the mods that you had were your progression. And so, if we made those tradable, then you could literally skip the league, find some exalts, trade them for the ability to do the hardest Arch Nemesis content. Here, because you have your Sentinel Controller, which powers up as you kill empowered enemies, you do actually have to engage with the league to progress with it, and therefore tradability is totally fine with the items in it. We also wanted to.
The Atlas passive that decreases the damage that monsters deal, but buffs their life, buffs the ever-living shit out of DD Ignite. So now you'll take 25% less damage baseline, and you'll deal way more damage while mapping. Yes, Sirik. Unironically, I might just be league starting DD. I terrible decision. IMO. I don't know, dude. There's definitely some changes there because you can see, yeah, like in this clip they just showed, you can see he immediately gets 17 stacks of Fortify from hitting the boss once. So melee in that way is going to be buffed in the sense that you will have Fortify. So a lot of builds that struggle to get it, like Fortify changes at least, right? But I can't, for the life of me, fathom why they would make a new expansion solely focused on endgame and endgame content and then leave the same things that have been meta for like almost a year, longer than a year, nearing 2 years in some cases. Why they would do that, I don't know, dude. I just can't. Because last league was like another no changes league, basically. They like panic buff spells on because of like Reddit / you know. And a lot of that didn't really do a whole lot. There was some stuff that came out of that, like Spark and stuff like that. EK is fun. But none of that is like defining a new meta, you know what I mean? Outside of that, there were no real balance changes. I think like you may see people like league starting Omni builds. Like Lightning Strike Omni is probably going to be pretty popular for like top HCSF players. But I can't believe 6 months of little to no balance changes. Why? I don't care about them nerfing. Well, nerfing they got shit in the pocketbook because they nerfed everything across the board with a lot of really bad changes, right? This is different than that. By the end of this league, Seismic Trap will be a triple S tier build for 15 months. With it being the best build for at least 9 to 12 of those 15. Isn't Omni going to be rare? Why would it be? Because they're adding a unique to the drop pool for the boss? Not necessarily. DD is the best. EA is more damage, but DD is just so tanky compared to EA. When D2 does more class balance changes than PoE. No, they said they're more likely to drop currency because they never did it all. It would drop in conjunction because they always drop a unique when you kill them. EA Champ isn't that tanky. Necro is insanely tanky to you. Like, insanely tanky.
If you see what I mean. But go experiment with stuff. This is the fun part of the league. We've got it in testing. It's going to be on alpha probably today for people who have alpha access. Do not email me for alpha access. You will not. Anyway, sorry. Just saving my inbox. We've got it going on alpha. We're going to get feedback, and this is the week where we get to make extra things that are fun, right? We get to look at it and go, maybe we should allow combining uniques or something like that, and come up with some extra stuff. So yeah, we'll come up with some cool ideas there.
I love the idea of combining uniques. That's super fun. With these recombinations, Amorous asks, is there any way to connect influences on items together? Say you combine 2 different influence items together. Can they do the same thing as an Awaken Orb and smush them together?
I'm going to do the dev check on that one to make sure I'm explaining exactly how it works. So what's the deal with influences?
Well, the short answer is no. The long answer is it picks the non-influence base type. Then it won't be able to select influence mods.
Right, okay. So when it's selecting base types, it picks one or the other. And if it picks one that is not influenced, it cannot select mods from the other one that have that influence, or have influence, because then they couldn't copy across. So the influences have to match in order for it to copy the mod. And there's still so much crazy abuse that players will work out with this kind of stuff. Like, we're coming up with crazy cases here where we have to put contrived stuff in to stop players making insane items that shouldn't exist. And even then, there's going to be a lot of rares that really have impossible mods on them that we are tolerating, and that's only the stuff we can think about. So, yeah.
All right. That answers the following question. Perfect. In that case, we shall move on to the next section. Let's talk a little bit about the Endgame Atlas, in particular the passive tree side of things, which was a huge introduction last league and been expanded upon with Keystones this time around.
Darky's helmet doesn't fix seismic
cryo
trab.
More control over our endgame experience.
It's still going to be 100 times better to use it with
these days in general, and also specifically
rallying.
Like Keystones, for example, allowing us to only drop our favorited maps, and nodes that disable unwanted league mechanics. And
like,
such.
it doesn't do shit.
This and the new passive tree overall feels like a big shift compared to PoE of yesteryear. What's led to the dramatic change for PoE's endgame and like player agency levels?
So, a lot of the time when we change our mind about something or do an experiment is because Path of Exile 2 is in the future. And we want to make sure Path of Exile 2 is the best game for the players possible. And that means, generally speaking, if we've tried something and there's a possibility we want to do differently in PoE 2, we will try the other thing. And so with Siege of the Atlas, we said, have a ton of control over all this stuff. And players loved it, and it went really well. And so we're giving a bunch more control here, see how that goes. We have a lot of stuff lined up for the endgame updates between now and PoE 2, and we'll get a bunch of information, and then, you know, reserve the right to change things massively when PoE 2 comes out, potentially.
It's a nice like safety net for you guys, I guess, because with a PoE 2, you can suddenly make big sweeping changes that otherwise people might be a little bit more resistant to. So
we have a schedule for like, I know exactly how many leagues there are between now and PoE 2, and we're putting the bullet points in of what we're going to do in these, and that's really helpful. Like, it gives us an actual runway of knowing this is how many times we have to experiment. Like, I have hard mode penciled in for one of these releases, and we know exactly ideally how that element's going to finish up and how much time it's going to give us between the release of hard mode and the release of PoE 2 for us to take feedback into account and see if there's any tweaks we'd make to the itemization based on data from that.
How many leagues are until PoE, sorry, did you say?
It's a number. It's a countable whole number.
And I guess the follow-up question for a later question I was going to ask anyway. How many leagues until hard mode?
Probably 2, but we can talk about that when you ask the question.
All right. Well, I'm sure that's in my list somewhere. Back to the Atlas, though, since that's what we're talking about at the moment. How successful overall do you feel that the new Atlas passive tree has been, and by what metrics do you tend to measure success of something like this when you implement it?
So we didn't really use metrics. We kind of knew it's awesome because we play the game ourselves and we know it kind of feels right to us. So when we did it, we thought, this is cool, and that's kind of good enough. And sure, if players absolutely hated it, we would have, like, you know, had a second thought about that, but we didn't look at metrics, you know? I mean, here's an interesting thing, right? If you said to me, what was player retention like last league? I would have said, absolutely amazing. Best ever. People played more, and all this amazing stuff. But if you look at the numbers, they quit in droves when Lost Ark came out because you can't miss the release of that game, right? And then Elden Ring came out. Like, there was no way that people were going to get the full in-game experience. But yet, I still feel that Endgame had the best retention because the players who happened to not be interested in the other two games played so much more than usual. And so to some extent, because a lot of our community went to play those really good other RPGs, we're expecting this is the actual release of the Endgame for them. Like, there are so many people who... And we're ignoring the fact that Diablo Immortal comes out in a few weeks, by the way, guys. That's not a game. We're going to play Path of Exile. But because people are sticking around for the whole league this time, they're actually going to have a full league with the new systems for the first time.
That's like an interesting counterpoint, I guess, like looking at metrics then, is that there's always like other things that are going on as well. Because I think a lot of people feel the same way, that like this last league is like in some ways the best Path of Exile has been, especially for me, like Endgame, especially like best Endgame I've played in PoE.
Sure, but what they're ignoring is that what casuals care about the most is new skill gems and like new builds and balance changes. Casuals don't give a fuck about Uber Elder. They don't give a fuck about Uber Exarch. They don't give a fuck about Uber Maven.
This release as well, it also gives people, because of the static balance thing.
Casuals are gonna be pissed at this. I would bet you guys, my fucking left nut and my right nut, that casuals hate this.
Have a chance to actually like. When our internal staff members worked out due to lack of balance things, the balance is probably going to be the same. I started to see people like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the end of the league start testing characters that are already public characters. You know, nothing's changed, of course, because they want to be ready for league launch day. And that gives all of the players the ability to do the same thing, where they can pick a build, try it out, you know, work out their plan, and know with confidence there's no surprise nerfs in there. And this went to the point where there are bug fixes, where I've had very long repeated conversation with people say to me, it's not a nerf, it's a bug fix, Chris, and we haven't put it in because technically it does affect how a build performs. And so we've left bugs in the damn game for this league. They're going to be fixed in 3.19, but you get to use those bugs again.
No. Is he alluding to DD right now?
That's the build.
Okay, I find that really funny. Oh no, okay.
So DD's dealing double damage still.
What were we talking about? I feel like we're getting sidetracked a lot today. It's great.
It's already a triple S tier build without the bugs.
So the passive tree, the Atlas passive tree thing. That thing's awesome. I love that. How do you guys feel about where like the concept of tree lock-in is at? That is like the ease and cost of respeccing the Atlas tree.
We're pretty happy with it. There's the vendor trade that caps the price from things getting too expensive, and we're not seeing players constantly respeccing the tree too often. To some extent, we want it to be expensive to respec, but you know, it's turned out to be in a pretty good place. So we do want to avoid strategies where you respec between encounters and so on. But technically, if you have the wealth, you can do that kind of strategy if you need to.
Yeah, it's kind of in line with the regular passive trees in that regard. The only kind of like friction point that I've thought of there is the idea of like different characters having the same shared passive tree. I love that it's shared progression, but rather if you've got like a bossing character and a mapping character, it's awkward that you can't have like separate trees for them. Is that something you guys have talked about at all?
There's some discussion about this. Like, we do acknowledge that that's certainly a thing, but we don't have any firm plans for it. There's various repercussions, both from a implementation point of view and in terms of like, obviously it lets you then have multiple Atlas specs that you can easily switch between for the cost of just hitting maps with a new character, which may be enough of a cost, but we don't have any firm plans, but it's certainly something that's being discussed.
Okay. Do you guys have like allocation, like heat maps for the Atlas passive tree? I think I remember you releasing something like that for the regular passive tree at some point. Is that something you look at all?
We can generate the data. We generally don't generate the data. Like, there was an internal joke that we generate stats for news posts, and then we get a chance to see what people are doing. You know, we honestly balance based on actually how things feel a lot of the time, because it's just so easy to look at the stats and completely misinterpret how something, completely misinterpret the stats by accident. There are people who write in by looking at PoE.Ninja and say, because of this percentage, you need to do blah. And when we look at our data just to double check it, it's entirely different because of some, bad statistics used, or that's only high-level characters or whatever. Like, here's an example, right? We were talking about Detonate Dead as a league starter, and I mentioned in conversation it's going to be pretty popular for reasons. And someone goes and looks up Detonate Dead on PoE.Ninja and sees that at the top of the ladder it's not really that popular compared to other builds. Well, obviously, as a league starter is not something that people are sitting at level 100 with. And so it's super easy if someone just goes and gets data to actually cause damage. Like, you have to think quite a lot more than that. So we try not to pre-generate data to look at and find problems with. And while it's cool to have heat maps, and I'm sure to make a good image, we haven't bothered. And I mean, we haven't made a concerted effort to buff all the specific mechanics on the Atlas tree. We just Fixed a few specific things like certain influence types being too strong, but generally speaking, this isn't path of nerfs for the Atlas tree either. Maybe for the older stuff, but that's pretty obvious there.
It sounded like you might have touched on my question there, my follow-up question, which is about the balance between Exarch and Eater of Worlds influence. In particular, it seemed like one was significantly better than the other.
Yeah, the patch notes are coming out just after this chat, so people will be able to see what we've changed. And our goal was to make Exarch as valuable as Eater, so hopefully we've managed to achieve that.
Cool, great. So answer some of my following questions. We're getting Keystones, and you mentioned ambitious plans to keep expanding the endgame until PoE 2. Does this mean that we will see Atlas Masteries and Cluster Jewels for the Atlas tree and so on?
We have not actually had an internal discussion that's brought up masteries and cluster jewels and stuff. Aside from when you showed me a draft of some of these questions and I asked the team what their thoughts were. That was the first time we actually discussed the concept of masteries and cluster jewels for the Atlas. So the intention is that we come up with things that make sense for it being an Atlas, which could be masteries and cluster jewels. Maybe those are great tools, right? But we'd have to actually work it out based on what the Atlas needs at the time.
I can see masteries. The Cluster Jewels one was I kind of added it as a joke. I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. But then again, I don't know. I feel like it could happen one day, so we'll see. More seriously, though, in what ways are you folks looking to expand PoE's already massive endgame over this period between now and PoE 2?
So you're probably going to see more player agency and more rewards for engaging with difficult content. There's kind of this thing where a Path of Exile player will get to the end game, and then they'll be like, I guess I'm done now. I've done my stuff, got my character finished. And the more stuff we can make it really clear of, actually, if you do this thing, you could get this reward. Like the challenges, for example, or these Uber Pinnacle fights. The more stuff we can dangle in front of you, the more time you will play. And maybe the more time you play, the more stuff you buy. And so this is like a business plan of give people more game, and that means more player agency, more rewards, more content. We have a plan for actual endgame content we're going to roll out, and you'll see it in coming expansions. Our goal is that we never have a live stream where we just say, oh yeah, the endgame's fine, we left it how it is. Our goal is basically endgame stuff, just accelerate, push, until PoE 2 comes out.
I love the idea of you guys do a live stream, you're like, didn't do anything.
Yeah. Remember how people liked the no character balance? We also did no content. So here's a league reset, new ladder, 8-second live stream. No, there's going to be a lot of stuff. And to be honest, we're really excited that we get to work on the end game every league. Because previously we kind of had this policy of just touch it once a year and touch it in a big way. And it kind of did feel stale. And if you were to ask me what one of our biggest mistakes was we always come out with leagues that at least I find compelling, and they're generally pretty good. But when we leave the end game alone, people get to the end game, they've played the league, and then it's kind of just on faith that they keep playing, having some fun, but there isn't new stuff to do necessarily. So that's why we want to make sure there is new stuff to do when you get to the end for each of your characters all the time going forward.
I think it's been a huge reason for PoE's success. I'm excited to see a more consistent role of endgame changes. Especially, I think it gives the fact that PoE 2 is coming, we have space because we know, hey, the early game experience is changing in a big way soon, so we can just focus on the end game. Feels kind of nice. We have a question from a lot of people in chat, kind of translated, which you kind of touched on a little bit, but with changes to the Atlas trees and, for example, the monsters gain more life one, that would give builds like Detonate Dead a big buff. So has this been taken into consideration at all?
That's a good point. That specific point wasn't discussed directly, but we do understand that, yes, the tree has changed, and that will change what builds you want to play, but they will work the way you expect, which is the key thing, right? We're not saying the right build for 317 is the right build for 318. The goal is that people have to think and pick their build. There's new challenges that are very hard.
No, you don't, because it's been the same meta for 15 months! Where you can
juice up these bosses to be very hard is also very hard. Your 317 builds may not be the right ones. But if you take a 317 build guide, it will function. There is no hidden nerf that prevents it from doing so. And there may be incidental stuff that goes much further than just the fact that monsters can get more life if you spec a keystone, and that makes your Detonate Deads better.
Dude!
It does scale DD, right? Yeah, okay, just checking that. But
dude, you take 25% less damage. 25%. That is stronger than champ, dude. You get Fortify and a half for free, and you get a 50% damage increase? No fucking chance I'm starting anything but Ignite DD. And I'm not saying this out of emotion. I am saying this because unless the patch notes that come out 30 minutes from now, they nerf that shit beforehand, I'm starting DD and I recommend everyone else does as well.
Oh.
Holy fuck.
Relieved a little bit that there's not like a bunch of balance changes this time. So maybe it's like an every now and then thing. It does seem right, but I guess we'll see how it feels after actually playing League. Yeah, so those keystones that change the health.
Seems dumb. It
do
is.
they affect Pinnacle bosses or just maps?
They affect monsters in your maps, I believe. How does this technically work?
Oh god.
So that terminology typically just refers to the maps on the Atlas and Pinnacle bosses. Yeah.
So Atlas
in
maps
case- in
only.
case
So this
Andrew
won't
wasn't
affect
involved,
any of the boss fights.
The maps on your Atlas are the ones affected by your Atlas tree when it's worded like that, and the Pinnacle bosses are typically not maps on the Atlas.
So the things that do affect Pinnacle bosses are probably referred to them specifically.
Yeah, there is like one keystone per Uber fight, which is pretty clear that it makes it really hard. Oh, and here's the thing, by the way, random rant. What we learned from the Maelstrom of Chaos back in closed beta was that you have to have a cost for accessing in-game content. The reason why we made the map system where it consumes the map is so that there's a cost to trying. If you want to try a red tier map, it's going to cost you a lot, right? A whole red tier map. And the reason for this is because we found that players would play the hardest content of the game and then die and then be very angry and complain and quit. So typically, if you have high content, you have to gate it behind it being hard to get to, like the Simulacrum or blah, blah, blah. Problem is, here, the absolute hardest content is gated behind clicking a keystone. So there are people who are going to play the Uber fights who probably can't complete them. So it's not the case that you should allocate the keystone in order to have a normal Path of Exile experience. This is going to kill you, right? Like, you have to be really good at the normal Uber fight the normal Pinnacle fights before it's worth allocating that keystone. So just get your regrets ready for unallocating that after you've seen how hard it is.
It'll put like one of those warning labels on it. You have to tear off first before you gain access to the keystone. Warning: this will probably kill you.
Yeah, we've had long, non-constructive arguments internally about whether this is technically Path of Exile's hardest content, where the answer is, of course it is, look at how hard it is, or I've come up with a contrived example of some other stuff. But as an example, you know the Feared, for example, where it's got lots of bosses, it's probably on par with that, or a bit above, or a bit below, depending on the individual fight. But that's kind of the scale here. You don't just walk into that fight expecting it to be straightforward. And so these are certainly the hardest, like, solo boss fights, with just, like, you know, 1 or 2 bosses in them.
Speaking of hard content, are the monsters from the new influence type seeing any changes? In particular, springing to my mind is the tentacle miscreations that appear about 80 of them at the same time and start shooting me all at the same time with tracking, heat-seeking bullets.
So we nerfed the Burning Ground from one of the Eater World's Alter mods that affects influence monsters. It was like a Burning Ground on death that's scale based on attack damage, and certain monsters had really high attack damage, so they had off-the-charts Burning Ground. That's been fixed. And we'll keep the tentacle miscreations as they are for you, Ziggy.
No.
Really?
Another Ziggy under the bus moment. Great, thanks. Okay. Oh no! I'm been giving the 10-minute warnings. All right, let's go. So Arch Nemesis modifiers are replacing old Nemesis and Bloodline modifiers. It had some really punitive and scary mechanics, like disabling Leech and combos that led to truly unkillable nightmares. I made a monster where I invited like the most OP people we could find into the map, and they couldn't kill it. However, we had control over making these monsters every time, but now it's random. And I know a lot of the time it's going to be like 2 or 3 mods, not 4 a lot of the time, but still, I need reassurance, Chris. I'm very scared.
So there's a lot of balance changes for the Arch Nemesis mods, and most of them are taking things that make sense in the context of Arch Nemesis and that don't make sense in the core game and fixing it. So for example, in Arch Nemesis, you're always fighting just one monster, and it's one that you can control what's on it.
This is going to be fucked, you guys.
But in the core game, it could be several monsters with a mod near you. Like maybe you've got a magic pack, or maybe you've just...
The chance that they take all these Arch Nemesis mods and add them to the game core on every rare you see, there's no way that they nailed this first shot. There is literally a 0% chance that there's not going to be absolutely fucked rare monsters. 0% chance. Hardcore players in chat, just be prepared.
Is a bit less punitive now. We've also globally nerfed Grasping Vines, like, you know, not related to Arch Nemesis in particular, but certainly affects it. The other thing is that in Arch Nemesis, each mod had a multiplicative life bonus, and so there were some very, very, very high life rares. But when we've integrated it into the core game, they don't have such a bonus. Like we've kept the monster magic and rare life about the same as it was before, and it doesn't come from their mods. But to be clear, that doesn't mean that the rare monsters are easy.
they were too easy before, we feel. They didn't, like, the basic idea is you play Path of Exile and you can kind of zone out and kill the monsters and it's fun and you have your, your power trip and everything's good. And then you run into, occasionally, a certain combination of rare mods that causes your character to have to pause and maybe do a different strategy. And that's how it's meant to be, that generally rare monsters are fine for you to kill, and sometimes they're hard. And people can try to argue they don't want a game where sometimes it gets hard, but the game we're making is one where sometimes it's hard, and that's done through rare monster mods, plus like things like act bosses and stuff that we can custom design. You could use the Diablo 2 example of like multiple shot lightning enchanted monsters, right? You can kill most of the rares and then you run into one of those and you have to be very careful, at least back in the good old days. So we do have combinations here that are hard, and we feel that something like turning off leech for a specific monster is not the end of the world. There are other ways of having to recover life, and if this is a game where you cannot be permanently leeching and occasionally you need another way of getting life, we don't feel that that is too bad. But we will make sure that things that are completely out of control are fixed, and there is a long list of changes. Actually, to clarify, there isn't a long list of changes. There's a lot of changes, but the patch notes basically just said we changed a bunch of stuff. It was getting completely out of hand to document it all, and it doesn't really matter because it doesn't affect your builds a lot, so we only covered important points, but the nitpicky detail
Give me the
I don't
patch
think
notes,
is there in the
please.
patch notes for these changes.
Jesus Christ.
We're going to speed through some more questions here.
Alright.
Are there any new skill or support gems this league? A lot of people asking.
Nope.
No, but we may have made some awakened exceptional support gems and hidden them away behind really hard bosses that no one's actually going to be able to kill and has a very rare chance of dropping them.
I love it. Awakened exceptional support gems. It's perfect. Yeah. It reminds me of some of the really, really long old support gem names we had. Hopefully we get back to those. Those halcyon
Well,
days.
they won't say it, Trap, but it definitely happens.
18-word long support gem names.
What he described definitely does happen.
Do we have any? Oh, yes. This was the question about hard mode. We're circling back to that now. Do we have any update on the previously teased hard mode?
Re-rolling the software SSO.
Hard mode is still being worked on, but it is a second priority. And what that means is, if a league is looking great and everything is fine and we're going to release it on schedule at high quality and everything's perfect, we work on hard mode. And if it is not going to be fine and we need to work on the league, we will of course 100% do that. So in no way are we letting hard mode stuff sacrifice any actual work from the core game. And this has meant that in some 3-month periods we just haven't touched it. And it's also tricky because it requires time from a lot of senior people, right? Like, Mark, for example, who is knee deep in like complicated Path of Exile 2 stuff right now, has to be dragged out of that to work on hard mode for bits and pieces that he needs to work on. It's tricky to find time. So we do have a schedule, and tentatively speaking, I would like to see it released by the end of the year. We want to make sure we do it right, of course, but that's what we're looking for. And because it's announced, we can be open with this, right? Like, it's not a secret. There's not going to be a big, like, there won't be a live stream where we say, surprise, hard mode's ready. It'll be the case of, remember that thing you've been testing for a while? Well, that's getting formally released with some prizes for a competition or whatever. So we will be very open about it.
Does that mean there might be some testing period before then? Maybe like
I think so, but not quite soon. Like, I'm thinking maybe a test in 3 months, maybe a release in 6, right? But I'm usually wrong, so double or triple or half those numbers, we'll see.
All right.
Turns PoE into a survival
I'd
game.
like to discuss visual clarity in Path of Exile if we can for a little bit.
No
So over
vendors.
the years, Path of Exile has become quite
no
good
skill
looking, especially
gems.
compared to some of those earlier screenshots and videos that are still floating around.
Thank you.
It especially feels that way when you're like leveling in early endgame progression. During these times, like the monsters, the player, and the ability all work really well together to both communicate like the gameplay that the game has, but also the game world and the setting and the feeling and all that sort of stuff. However, when Path of Exile scales up, which it does, it scales up a lot these days, things rather quickly devolve into like a colorful blur where both like gameplay understanding is lost and also aesthetics are lost. Is this what are your thoughts in general on visual clarity in Path of Exile?
No skill gem
currently?
vendors at all done.
Is there any plans on how you might approach this in the future?
So we're not going to argue that the visual clarity is in a good place there, right? Like, it's really a matter of what we're doing about it, right? And the most extreme thing we could do would be to pause all other development and just sit there improving visual clarity for ages on every existing thing. And we actually do kind of have the ability to do that in the form of Path of Exile 2, because pretty much everything's getting redone. And so because they've learned all the lessons from 15 years of work on Path of Exile 1, they can make sure to design stuff in a way where when it scales up, it doesn't lose
super
visual
low
clarity
drop
when
rates
stacking
too.
other stuff.
Like that.
And so the PoE 2 team, who are working on the version we're all going to eventually be playing in a few years, they know this and are working for it. So the question is, what are we doing for PoE 1? And any new stuff we make involving effects, we try very hard to make sure it has visual clarity. I hope you will find that when you're playing Sentinel, that the Sentinel effects are both relatively subtle but clear as to what is tagged and what rewards they're giving, and they stack with other things appropriately. Let us know if you feel that needs work. We make sure that new stuff that we make works well from a visual clarity point of view. And we do invest occasionally a bit of work in making sure that certain other old effects that are terrible from a visual clarity point of view are improved. But to be honest, a lot of the old PoE 1 graphics get mostly thrown away when PoE 2 comes out and replaces a lot of stuff. So, and by that I mean skills and so on. Like the campaign, yes, that will exist, but the campaign doesn't have visual clarity problems. And we will be playing with Path of Exile 2 skills on our Path of Exile 1 characters in the future.
Yeah, I think that's probably the problem. Like, a lot of the new stuff has been really good, but it kind of gets lost in the background of all the old stuff that really overwhelms it because it's. To put it simply. Glad to hear that it's something you guys.
Yeah, it mostly feels like streamer content on, to be honest.
Look forward to seeing more progress in that. A lot of people have also been asking in chat about Loot 2.0 as well. I know we've had like little testers or little tastes of some of that change. Lessening. Where are we at in terms of like Loot 2.0?
There's a lot of axes here, right? So the first thing is hard mode is going to be good for people that really want no clutter. Like if they really just want it so that items are special when they find each one, they go play that. It's kind of perfect. The second thing is we have been doing things like reducing the number of times you find currency item and increasing the stack sizes, basically working towards decluttering. We also had some experimentative changes related to decluttering, which were deployed months ago that no one has noticed yet, which is good. That means that it hasn't had an effect on the actual economy, and it hasn't had an effect on, item drops to the point where people will notice, and we'll gradually continue to tweak that. It's mostly in the form of culling items that would never be picked up. And so, the better we get at that, the better it is. I just don't want players to feel that we're culling items that are valuable to them because we're really trying very hard not to. And the basic goal is, I know we're going over time, but at the end of the day, there are two ways to declutter, right? Way number one is to leave the spam of rares and uniques that people are used to, right? This really rewarding thing where there's quite a lot of item dilution. Leave that in place because people like it, and to reduce clutter of other things, in which case at the end of the day, it's a big pile of yellow items on the ground. And I think we'd be lynched if we did a solution other than that.
Lynched?
Or to
Jesus
actually
Christ.
solve itemization issues with the game and say, look, rares should be special, blah, blah, blah. And that's what hard mode's for, right? We get it. A lot of people like the reward spam. And so because of hard mode, there will be a way where rewards are very, very, very precious, and they can play there if they want, in my opinion, superior experience. But baseline PoE will probably still not have substantial drop nerfs, at least during PoE 1. And then, of course, with PoE 2, we can look at what makes sense, knowing what players like, but also knowing how that game works.
Awesome. Well, I've been giving the time warning quite aggressively, but just kidding. Thank you very much, Chris, for spending some time with us and answering some questions today. I'd appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks
for
hosting. Suggesting stuff. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Very much.
At your release.
All right. We have so much shit to talk about, you guys. We have so much shit to talk about. Okay. Forum. Fucking patch notes. Hey, patch notes are live. Okay. YouTube frogs, thanks for hanging out with me. If you guys want to, I'm gonna end this here because this is gonna be a patch note reading, and I'm gonna put this up on my channel as a as its own separate video. So if you want to continue watching the stream and joining the conversation, feel free to join me over on Twitch. I linked it in chat because it's time for me to start playing music and stuff like that. And I can't do that while streaming on YouTube because my channel will get strike. So I'm going to be shutting off the YouTube stream now. Thanks a bunch for hanging out with me during the reveal. Now I'm going to swap over to streaming only on Twitch. So anyone that wants to, take part, feel free to join me over there. If not, have a good day. Thanks a bunch for hanging out, and I will see you guys in the next video, which should be uploaded by tonight. Bye, YouTube people.